Hi, everybody. This is Coach Hart with the Baskipedia Podcast, brought to you by System Basketball. My guest today is Coach Evan Massey of Galesburg. He's coached there for 43 years, and today is very interesting. Coach was coached traditional basketball, likes to play up tempo, went to the system from 2010 to 2013, and then went away from it. So we're going to ask some questions about his journey and why he chose to go to the system and why he left the system. So how you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for letting me talk here.
All right. So how's everything in Galesburg? Are you guys under, is it bad? Is everything kind of open, or how's it going there right now with the COVID situation?
Illinois, the governor's been pretty strict, and as a result with Chicago, our numbers were low, but then when it's opened up like every place else, our numbers are starting to go up, and we've had, virtually, I think we had 3 days of basketball camp this summer, but otherwise have been shut down.
So you got 3 days in, then they shut you down?
It just, I think here, the irony is in Illinois that you can't do things, but we're so close to Iowa, and that there's kids involved in AAU, travel baseball, all the other things, and they're going all over to different states and have brought some of the disease back then.
Okay, so you've been doing this for 43 years. It's a long time. I'm in year, 21, 22, somewhere in there. So I can't even imagine doing another 20-something years of this. But 2010 comes around, and you've been playing up tempo, is what you kind of told me. And you went to the system. What was the thought process of why you went back in 2010 to the system and switched?
Well, yeah, like you say, we'd been up tempo in the terms of we didn't do the system, the rapid subbing and things, but we had usually played about 8 to 10 kids. We had defensively pressed man and 1-2-1-1. We would alternate back and forth, and so created some tempo that way. Played man to man. We ran West Head's numbered break, and then kind of went into some sets and things. But we'd had really good success throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, and had gone to state numerous times, and kind of felt like the program was getting stale, that we were kind of losing something then. And we had a losing season the year before, and worse, had kids that I thought lacked enthusiasm, and had some different discipline issues. And I saw, one of the things I saw coming in the year ahead was that we had the incoming sophomores and juniors had some kids that were great attitude kids, some good athletes, and had some particularly good shooters. And the senior group were some that I thought didn't have the same level of enthusiasm. And so one of the things, the thought was that I could go to the system and I could get these sophomores and juniors playing, and maybe do it in a way that was less disruptive, as opposed to just, benching some other kids was part of it. But here in Galesburg, we're also, Knox College is here, which is in the same conference as Grinnell. And so I would say, late 90s, early 2000s, whenever Grinnell would come to town, normally Knox would have, maybe, 150 people in the crowd. Grinnell comes into town, and there's, 600 or 700 people that are going there. One year, the local newspaper previewing the game said the circus is coming to town.
I was just going to ask you that, because I'm in California, where Coach Gary Smith ran it with Redlands, and I grew up in Laverne, and that is in the same conference as Redlands. So when Redlands came down to Laverne, they would say the circus is coming. So it was the same thing. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, and I just saw what was happening, and you go down and you watch Grinnell play, and I thought we were in general an up-tempo team. But I also saw other teams, are using a lot of things to slow the game down, and scores were in the 30s, and you're saying you're up-tempo and it's not happening. And so in the back of my mind, I'd always thought, would it work? And so that's kind of where I started the journey then, as far as process of deciding, was it something that would work? And in a lot of ways, it was, kind of brought an excitement of doing an experiment.
Back then, Coach, were there quite a few teams running it, or was it just a select few in your state or in the area? Because I know you're around Grinnell, so you're not far from them. You're, like you said, you have a school that you can see them play. So I would assume it's probably a little bit more popular in Iowa, Illinois, and in the Midwest where it originated. How was it back then? Was there a lot of schools or a handful?
At the time we went to it, I was, the only other school I was aware of doing it was Olivet Nazarene, and with Coach Porter on the women's and the college level, but was unaware of any high school programs that were doing it. And as we got into it, still really wasn't aware of any high school programs going away. So, maybe for me, it was a point in a career that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think now he's been on some of the Zoom calls as yourself. Zach Keene of Macomb. Mm-hmm. I think maybe are they probably the only team in the state probably running it in Illinois?
I think maybe, on this side of the state that they are with it. I'm not sure. I think there were maybe a couple teams in the Chicago area that were running it, but, I'm not for sure that way with it.
So did you coached the girls, did you do it the Grinnell way? Did you do it the Olivet way, or did you kind of do it your own way?
I think somewhere between maybe Olivet and my own way with it, that and I'm not sure, would have to go back and do some thinking, but, of really the education process was, you and I had talked earlier about the Yahoo Mail group, and got a lot of information that way, and watched lots of videos and books, and then met with Coach Porter. But we pressed, our thing was dead balls or makes, face guard everybody full court, make them throw it over the top of us and get them going. We would, like on free throws, maybe do a traditional 1-2-1-1 and trap as it came in bounds, pressed misses. And then we, defensively, we end in the half court. We're trying to get two on the ball all the time, kind of with that. So I think, maybe press wise, we were doing stuff similar to Grinnell with it. Offensively, we ran the Loyola Marymount, the numbered break. That was kind of the foundation of what we were trying to do. And then we would do some of the Olivet dribble drive stuff. But probably the unique thing we did was we still would run some quick hitters with it. And one year got the opportunity to speak at Grinnell Clinic with it, and one of the things that talked about was some of the quick hitters we would use to get threes, and that was kind of, not system-like to be doing it, but we weren't setting up and running a lot of stuff. It was just real simple things of where we would do had things where a flex cut, where we were really trying to do is get somebody lost and get a three coming up, or screen the screener kind of action with it, those kind of things. But, I think we still were getting shots off and getting threes, pretty quickly. But that was probably the non-system part of what we were doing.
So did you have traditional goals, like the 5 goals? Did you
yeah, we did.
I had to modify them because we only played 32 minutes. But did you do the divided by 20%? Because kind of back then, maybe the 5 goals hadn't changed. For people that don't know, the 5 goals that people talk about today are a little bit different than what they were originally. I think you probably know it. One of them was trips across. It was trips, wasn't it? Like across midcourt. I think Coach A originated. It was trying to get the other team's center to cross midcourt X number of times. It wasn't. Today it's changed. It's 100 shots. Most people will say 53s, offensive rebound percentage, X number of turnovers forced, and a plus minus on shots. So I think that what's changed, maybe, I don't know if it was that way for you in 2010, but I think that 5th one may have changed. Am I right?
I don't know. The offensive rebound percentage was the same, forcing the turnovers with it, X number of threes getting, and shots attempted was the same with it. And so those were, the same in terms of doing.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, if you could ever recall, because the statistical category says if you hit all 5 of those goals, that you should win 96% of your games. If you can recall, if you ever hit all 5 of them, did you ever lose?
No, I don't think so.
But the problem is getting them, all 5 of them, right? I mean, that doesn't happen. I don't know how many times that happened. Do you know how many times you probably?
Rarely. But I thought for us, what really became, a real predictor was number of threes made as far as wins and losses that way, and became a big deal as far as getting what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating because they never really talk about it. They always just say the 5 numbers. And we've joked about it on some of the clinics and the Zoom calls. I'm like, well, geez, guys, if you shoot 53s and you check off that as a goal, but you make 1, you're probably going to lose. Because you got to put the ball in the basket, right, Coach? So, I mean, what was that number? Was it a magic number for you, like 10, 12?
It seemed like if we got 12, seldom did we lose with it.
Yeah, so you got 36 points off of threes.
Right. And, kind of ironic because one of the things I felt like what needed to do was really work trying to sell with the system. First working on trying to sell it to the kids. And I brought a group of them in that I thought were our core, and we went through a PowerPoint in the spring and kind of trying to get them pumped up about doing it. And like I mentioned to you with the blog, that was trying to sell it. One of the things to try and build enthusiasm was we had the McDonald's in town. They would make a triple cheeseburger. And what would happen is we sold a T-shirt that said Galesburg Basketball, it's $3ridiculous. And then it had McDonald's logo on the back. And any of the kids or adults, if they wore the T-shirt to a game and we got 12 threes, they went and got it. They had a coupon and got a free triple cheeseburger. And what was neat was on the wall, the students' body would spell out cheeseburger. And so you hit the first one, they put a C up, the second one an H up. And anytime we got to that 12th one, which was
and that so happens to be cheeseburger is 12 letters, right?
Yeah, and the student body would go nuts. And I remember once we had a girl who, if we were playing regular style basketball, she wouldn't have gotten on the floor until the game was decided. And in a game, she, in the middle of the 4th quarter, was the one that hit that 12th one. And you would have thought that she'd hit the game winner and stuff. Everybody went nuts.
So the system, what's the most positive thing about coaching it? I mean, what's the most thing, or what did you enjoy the most about running the system?
I think there's several things. I think one of the things I liked from a competitive standpoint is I liked the fact that I felt like the other team was going to spend their week preparing for us. They were going to end up having to do things differently than they were ever going to do. I remember once we were playing in a regional championship, and so the other team's going to be a good team. And in the paper, the coach bragged about how they'd spent all week working against 7 defenders to try and get ready to play us. And to me, I thought right away, well, that's a positive. If they're ending up having their kids spend an entire week doing something they don't normally do, what the coach is basically sending a message is, what we usually do isn't going to work against these guys. You've got to adjust. And I like that. I think another thing I liked a lot was the tendency is you think of the system as being freelance. That, okay, the kids, it's going to be all, they're just do their own thing. And I think the system is in some ways one of the most regimented things, because there's no gaps in play. You know, that you turn the ball over, immediately there's a transition to the next thing. You don't get a chance to jog down the floor and think about it. You make a shot, there's immediately you go into the next thing. And I think that's something that that is just really neat as far as the system, as far as being able to do those kind of things. And I enjoyed that part of it.
So on the negative side, did you get a lot of flack in the community or administration or anything about when you did it? What was the main things that was it the typical, you give up too many layups, you shoot too many threes, you play too many people? Was it that type of thing that you were getting?
You know, to be honest, any of the people that really mattered, you know, in terms of my job or the players' things, I don't think we really had negativism that way. The principal was like 100% supportive of what we were doing, thought it was great in what we're doing. I think some of the Grinnell being close enough in terms of being there, I think it helped sell it some. I like the player who turned out was going to be our best player that was returning, and she eventually went on set state record for most threes in the season. I was worried, you know, the classic of what's going to happen if her dad or she finds out she's going to play less minutes this year than she did in the past. And they had a total buy-in completely with it. I think in general, moms loved it. I thought dads were kind of, I think with some of the dads, they weren't as excited about it because some of the dads want to think that they're an expert in everything about basketball. And now you're doing something that doesn't fit right in their way of thinking. And so they're having trouble wrapping around it. And so some negative about that. As time went on, I know, like I remember one dad of a good player, you know, how parents can do, they may never say something to your face, but they say it to the people that are going to get it to your face. And his comment was that I'd run in the crazy system and screwed up his daughter's shot. And, you know, was ridiculous in terms of what going on with it. But otherwise, you know, it was the period of time we were doing it, newspapers had a lot of those deals where people could just go on the internet and they'd have comments you could put afterward, and they didn't have to put their name with it or anything like that.
Anonymous. Love it.
And the coach's dream.
The ultimate media or social media hide behind the computer person.
Yeah, and there were some people that were that way with it. I thought, you know, the irony was, I think when went to the system, some of the biggest critics were coaches who played. Kind of needs the very first year we went to in Thanksgiving tournament, so it was like our maybe 4th or 5th game of the year. we were playing the defending state champions who had the core of their team back, but through different circumstances, their coach had been removed, so it was a new coach. And I think maybe out of a little arrogance that they didn't really scout, they didn't really prepare, and just thought, kind of dismissed, well, what they're doing really isn't basketball and we'll be all right. Well, we beat them, something like, 85-82 in a real thriller, really good high school game and stuff. Well, their coach went absolutely nuts. And, they almost were at the verge of having to get the police to settle him down. And I'm sure a lot of it was that it was just that negativism about with the system, that you're doing something that they don't believe in and you beat them. And it's like, and so those kind of things were fun and satisfying.
So over the 43 years of coaching there, you did it 2010 through 13. Are all the scoring records and 3-point records from when you ran the system?
3-point definitely are. Not all the
points in a game.
Pardon?
Most points scored in a game? No,
I don't. Actually, had been earlier in the 90s, because we did in the like from 95 to 2005, we'd had, we're pretty up tempo in what we did and pressed and stuff, and
like
probably
style back then.
Yeah, somewhat. That, but we probably had more talented players than we did when we were running the system in terms of things.
So how much does talent play into running the system? Do you think you don't have to be as talented, or obviously talent helps whatever you run, whether you want to play slow, fast, but do you think it's an equalizer? If you're not as talented, do you think more teams should run it? Because my opinion is you got two choices if you're not very talented. I forget. Remind me, do you guys have a shot clock?
No.
Okay, so you could play that strategy. See, here in California, we have a shot clock. So our choice would be to run like a Princeton offense or something like that and take shots under 10 or under 5 seconds on a shot clock. Just try to limit the possessions. That's my thing I think you got to do if you're not that good. Or you play hyper fast, like a Grinnell style, and you're trying to shoot it between 7 and 10 seconds. What do you think it is? Because I don't believe if you play middle of the road and you're not very talented, I think you're just going to get beat.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the literature and the coaches that know a lot more about it than I do, the thing I always remember them saying is, you got to accept if you're going to run this system, the good side is you've got a chance to upset people that you probably normally wouldn't. But you have to accept you may end up being upset by some because what happened and things. But I think, like going where you're talking about the criticism of it and, what do you use and things. I think that's where a coach, there's a spectrum between, like you were saying, maybe Princeton at one end of we're going to walk up and do that, to, clear at the other end of a pure system thing. And there's things in between there. I think one of the things a coach needs to decide if they're going to go to the system is you kind of decide a little bit ahead of time of what's your picture of what the system is going to be. With it, what modifications you're going to be. And obviously you've got to have some consistency. Like I saw a team that, considered itself a system team, and they were pressing 1-2-2 3/4 court, which to me is, you want to slow a game down, that's the best way you can do it. And it's like, okay, I believe you can make adjustments to the system based on what you want, but you got to recognize what are you giving up with it and what you're doing. But I guess what I'm saying then is, when I chose to go to it, I wanted to say, we're going to run a Grinnell style. I wanted to be, I wanted to sell it. I wanted to boom with it and stuff. I think a person knowing what their school is and what they're going to do, I don't think you can do it without saying that's what you're doing. You know, if it's better to end up saying, we're going to play up tempo, or we're going to play, I think it's so much easier to sell saying, we're going to play a Loyola Marymount style, because I think people, a certain generation, identify so many positive things with that. So
yeah, especially here in California.
Yeah, well, across the United States, I think.
I mean, Paul, Westhead, that's ironic, Westhead. Bring him up for a second is he goes to Lakers, right? And the guy that's known to play one of the fastest tempos ever gets fired supposedly because he didn't play fast enough for the Lakers. And that's the rumored story. That's not the whole story, but that's part of, if you watch the documentary on ESPN, The Guru of Go, that I didn't go fast enough. I mean, it was a butting of heads of him and Magic, and that, let's be real, what it really was. So, and then the birth of Pat Riley and Showtime began. So 2013 hits, Coach, and what was the decisions, or what was the thought process of moving away from it? What happened?
It's a good question, and it's one my wife would probably like to hear the answers with it, because she'll always. I told her that
you can bring her on.
Yeah, I told her that you had emailed and asked me to do this with the system, and her first thought was, she ended up all of a sudden, she's not a real basketball fan, and she immediately goes, oh, good, you're going to go back to that again. Because she loved it as a fan, thought it was great in terms of the number of playing and things. You know, I think as got ready to talk with you, I kind of listed, you know, figuring out what were reasons we went to it, what were reasons I liked it, and then thought you'd ask this question, why didn't you with it? Mm-hmm. And to be honest, my list of what I liked about it, why I went to it, is much longer list than trying to explain. I don't think I could, you know, come up with a convincing argument to tell you why I didn't. I loved playing multiple kids, more kids that way, and they knew they were going to get in. We adapted the shifts where, like the girl that set the state record for threes, we'd get to a certain point in the season and she might stay in 3 or 4 shifts in a row with it. And she, you know, would say, well, I can't, half court, I can't be running around trapping and doing all that. And I said, we're not having you out there to trap. You're not fast enough to do it. Just worry about getting threes up there and stuff. But I don't know. I think I felt like as I looked at the group of kids that were coming in, we had a girl that was going to be 6'2", 6'3", and I thought had potential to be very, very good. And she did turn out to be very, very good. But I just, I realized that there's places could play her in the system, but I just didn't feel comfortable about how I was going to use her there. And then I felt like I had a couple guards that were twins that the two of them were very athletic, very skilled. I thought their skill level was a lot higher than the kids that were going to come behind them and stuff. So I think they would have, if just had them, they would have been great in the system because of what they could have done defensively. But I didn't do that with it. I thought that there was maybe a little bit of, I thought it was going to build the interest level, build our numbers. And I didn't see that we were getting the numbers sticking with it. You know, there were kids that were juniors that were getting to play a little that wouldn't normally, and they didn't come back out as seniors and stuff. So I didn't think our numbers were changing there. And as I look back of maybe some of the reasons that I got away from it were things that I could have corrected. I think we shortened the practices in the traditional Grinnell way. And I kind of looking back on it, I think as a high school coach, I don't think I would have shortened them as much. And I would have done devoted time to more skill work. And it may not have been, you know, traditional system things, but I felt like some of the kids were losing skill level. And then the other adjustment that I could have made, should have made was the one aspect of the system I didn't like was the half court defense, because when you got against better people and they'd spread it out and they'd pass it around and then they have a wide open 15-foot shot, I had trouble with. And that's on me. I should have, we should have varied maybe what we were doing defensively there. And I've often thought, like, maybe if I was going to go back to it again, would do completely Loyola and get back in a 2-3 zone and just say, hey, we'll go back far enough so you'll take a quick shot. If you're not going to take a open 3, we'll give you an open 17-footer. If you're not going to take it, we'll give you an open 15-footer. And I think you could still create tempo doing that and not necessarily, have some of the negatives it had with it. But the irony is, this coming year, I see we've got maybe, 9, 10, 11 kids I want to play. We're not going to sub the system way that quick, but we're really looking to do a lot more of the system stuff of I want to get it out, push it, pressure all the time and stuff.
Maybe a dribble drive, Wahlberg type thing, or even LMU.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing with it. And I've got confidence in, as I said earlier, when we did system things that it sounds chilling to system coaches to say, well, we ran the system and we ran some sets, because I think they're thinking like 7 passes and the shot goes up. I think most of the stuff we did was just like where we're trying to get something within the first 10 seconds. And what we did we really didn't work on trying to get threes off quickly. Is the kid that couldn't shoot quickly, we just have them work on shooting farther out. And so they'd shoot 6 or 7 feet off the arc. The kid that was our real good shooter was that way. She wasn't have a quick release, but shot as far as more range and what doing.
And how many did she make in a career?
The one season, I think she had 139 threes, wow, which is our state record with it. And we actually, I don't know if it's posted. Our state doesn't send the things in, but we had some good shooters, because the last I had checked, and I don't remember the total, but I wrote it down here. We ended up, the most threes we ever took in a game was 72. And usually we're somewhere between 55 to 60, but averaged around 45. But last I checked, most made threes in a season, we had 397, which is still the national record with it. But the real source of pride is to get that we only are second in national with attempts. We shot 1,476 threes that one season. So we did take a lot of threes.
I don't know how you ran it without a shot clock. I mean, if I'm opposing coach, I'm spreading you out probably once it gets across half court, like you said, and making life miserable for you and trying to make those kids' minute shift turn into 3 minutes, like just to try to, but then again, then you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish because you're getting them to play a totally different style just to play against you. So
yeah, we really didn't. I think our experience, or my experience with it, the opposing coaches always seem to try to adjust of doing something defensively to slow you down, versus like you're saying is, I think the most effective would be offensively making you have to play defense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would do it if I didn't have a shot clock. because I got that built in, knowing that they have that up there, that I know they have to shoot the basketball. Now it's just, can I get them to shoot it quicker than they would like to? So did you do anything in practices, like, or count it down in your head? Did you do the 12-second scrimmage or anything like that, or 12-second shot clock in your head? Like, you rebound and you go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8 to help them to the tempo?
No, I can't remember. There was somebody had come up with, and I can't remember the phrase that we used. It may have just been, that's too long. And so if we were doing something at a certain point, would just say that's too long, and they knew that meant they had to drop the ball and give it to the other team in what they were doing with it. But I don't really remember, it being an issue of too long with things with it. Of that, they did a pretty good job of. I thought going into it that zones you'd get up the shots a lot quicker, but not. And that's again, Doug Porter. I thought his phrase all the time was, that you didn't have to give up what you believed in and what had worked for you, but you have to always weigh what impact does it have on the decisions you're making with the system and things. And I remember at some point, maybe early in what you were doing this spring with one of the coaches was talking about that in the half court, instead of doing 2 on the ball all the time, they did it out of a 1-3-1. And it's, to me, what you were describing earlier about the offense passing around the thing, that sometimes when we play against a 1-3-1, if our kids can handle it and pass, that the game just slows way down in what you're doing. And I think that's where defensively you just can't do those kind of things and remain a system team.
Yeah. I remember biggest thing that's set with me with Doug and system coaches is whatever you're going to install with the system, if it slows you down from getting your 3-point attempts or getting the shots up quickly, then you probably shouldn't put it in. Like you said, with the 1-2-2 3-quarter press, there's variations that you can do with the pressing. And I'm a Wahlberg press guy, and I took this to heart with Doug. It was like almost like he was like looking at me and saying, "This is, if you run a 2-2-1 press, you're not going to create the pace fast enough." And back in 2010, 11, when I was doing this and called Gary, I wanted to go faster. I never pulled the trigger on it. And he said, you need to switch press, is what Gary told me too. So the both of them, because Wahlberg plays in a quicker tempo as well, but you don't create the pace because you're not gambling as much. You're more protecting the rim. So you're not willing to give that up, and that's a big criticism of the system, is that a lot of coaches, including myself right now as I'm processing doing this, is the aspects of seeing a kid lay the ball in the hoop without a defender back there. It's like kind of.
But I think the observation I had, and something I think if I was doing it again that I'd try to be better at is that I think sometimes you have to believe in what you're doing, and so you have to believe in the system, and so you believe in the system that a lot of people, I think, start into the system, and then they hit a couple bumps, and immediately then, okay, we're going to stay a system team, but we're not going to press any because we're giving up too much. Well, then, you're not really a system thing. But I think if I was going to do it again, I think I became a little bit lazy in terms of game stuff, of where we press a certain way, and you got to be able to still make adjustments within the game with it. I don't know if this makes sense, but this past year, a team that they aren't a system team, but was a team that wants to create tempo. And so they were pressing, full court, really, really aggressive. Well, every single time the other team pass it inbounds, they would go trap it. They would then, weak side wing would rotate up and take away the inbounder. The middle person would take away the sideline. Every single time they left the middle open. And they just did it over and over and over. And I think that's sometimes what system coaches we can fall into, is we just start doing things the same way. And within a game, you know, the obvious adjustments, if they're going to press break with 2 up or 3 up or 4 up, you have to be able to adjust with it. But I think for me, looking back, if I had studied it more and worked harder on how to adjust the half court trapping, I would have stuck with it instead of giving up on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's different people, how they do it. Grinnell will trap everywhere. And then Gary Smith, if the ball goes to the corner, he'd play lock coverage. He wouldn't go run and trap when the ball went to the corner. I learned that. And then Lauren Glenn, the new that took over for Doug, she does things a little bit differently in the half court as well. So, I mean, even though it's system, there's still different variations off of it. But like you said, there's a lot of teams that may play up tempo, sub 5 in, 5 out, and they say they're system, but they're not system. They're just playing up tempo. They just want to say that they're system. So you said that you might go to it again. So you got your 8 to 11. So you're looking at playing up tempo, and you've been studying some stuff during COVID. What have you been looking at, and what are you potentially going to take back to your program?
Well, I think it's not as much anything new as much as just kind of going back and kind of listening to some of your presentations and others, looking back at things that I don't think if I say to you, we're an up-tempo team, and then you watch film, and what would you look at and say, well, you said you're up-tempo, but you're not doing this and this and this. And that's kind of what I've tried to do some. And like one of the things is, I think when we were good, whether we were system or regular, the Paul Westhead of getting it out of the net and getting the ball up the floor, and of getting back to that mentality of the idea that we're going to push the ball up the floor. Whether we're taking a shot, we're going to push it up the floor all the time. And I think that's, something of doing. I think the other is of, in terms of creating tempo and different things, of the mixing up pressing 1-2-1-1 and an aggressive man-to-man with it. I think that isn't as effective for tempo as face guarding, but I think we can get our turnover percentage up higher doing that. So looking at some of those kind of things with it.
Last question I have for you is, what advice would you give to any coaches that would want to run the system? What would you advise them?
Well, I think, one is study it. A great thing about the system, I think, has always been of what you're doing right now with others is that communication of, I've never in coaching been through a situation where coaches were so willing to share as system coaches. They're not, I was thinking North Carolina is the ones where you could go hear Dean Smith or Roy Williams when they'd speak at a clinic and they'd talk about the Carolina break, and they wouldn't give you anything because
they give you the clinic answers, right?
Yeah. But I think, study those things that way. I think you learn it, you learn what the basics are. So like you said earlier, you have to understand anything you're going to go away from, how are you affecting those basics with it. I think you have to sell yourself. And if you're willing to do it, again, great advice my wife gave me was, I think the first year, maybe right about Christmas time or something, I had some doubts about what was going on. We'd lost a couple games. And her comment to me was, you spend all this time trying to figure out how to sell the kids on running the system. And her advice was, you should have spent some of that time selling yourself. And I think you got to make sure as a coach that you're going to sell yourself on what you're willing to do, and then be willing to stick with it in what you're doing. But I would really say if you're going to do the system, I think you need to be willing to, you sell it to your players, but I think you need to make sure you sit down with your administration, and you don't go to them asking for permission to do it, but I think you educate them on, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. And from your standpoint, we're going to play more kids. We're going to end up teach these kids to play hard all the time and do it. And so, because you want them, because I don't think you want your administration going to a game and them, the guy, my principal at the time was an old wrestling coach. Well, I didn't want him trying to figure out why we were subbing 5 at a time and doing all the other things. And so I think you got to, convince them that way. And then the last thing I think is you got, the system goals, and you do different things with that, and that will increase your odds. But if you go to the system, don't let it get lost in the shuffle that there's still a scoreboard up there, and that your objective is to try to win games, and it's not to set certain other records in what you're doing. So if you have to massage the system with your group to get some wins, that's not illegal. It's kind of like sometimes in the system, as a coach, do you feel like you've got all the different resources now? It's as if you need a confessional, that a system coach needs to come in and do a confession that they violated system rules in order to win a game.
There you go. That's a good one, Coach. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to wish that you guys stay safe out there in Illinois, and hopefully we have a season, and good luck to you and your program at Galesburg, and hope to see you on some future Zooms with us.
Okay, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Coach. Thanks.